Hi everyone, thanks for joining. Welcome to the April 2021 Bode market update for Calgary. So as we usually do, we're going to jump into the numbers, look at mainly supply and demand, and dig into what's happening in the market at this time. It's been quite interesting to say the least. So best proxy for supply in real estate is total inventory and also new listings. So looking at this chart here, we can see that the blue line was 2020. Listings really fell off the map last year around April. So where we would typically expect to see, 3,000, 3,200 new listings come to market, last year we only saw 1,500 come to market. Now, if you look at this kind of light blue line, you can see that we are starting to get supply back in the market. So I think a lot of people who, maybe wanted to sell last year and determined that the beginning of a global pandemic might not be the right time for that, they're starting to bring their homes back to market. So new listings are up 83% based on the average of the last 3 years, which is great news that we're starting to see more supply, but it's not really enough. So in the battle between supply and demand continues to outpace supply. And so we'll see that here. Again, the dark blue line we see is 2020. Sales were dismal in the month of April. There was a ton of uncertainty in the market. People didn't know what was happening. There was a lot of job insecurity. And, where we typically expect to see about 1,500 sales, we saw a third of that. So we only saw about 500 sales in April of last year. But as I said, demand is really outpacing supply. So, we've seen in March of 2021, we saw close to 3,000 sales, which is about 150% of the average over the last 3 years. So inventory, as you kind of expect, it increases through May, June, and decreases in December. There's less sellers on the market at that time. It's not as desirable time to be on the market. So we're starting to see inventory creep up, but we're still below 3-year averages. We're about 12% lower than the 3-year average. Now, where the supply-demand balance really gets interesting is when we look at months of supply. So again, the pandemic hit, you can see we had nearly 10 months of supply. That's a function of really only selling 500 homes that month. So what we're seeing here is that months of supply is very low. It's under 2. And, even in our very busy markets of, call it 2007, 2012, 2014, it was never that imbalanced. So what's further interesting here is if you break it into product category, as you can see in the top right-hand corner, we're looking at all residential property for metropolitan Calgary. So that's going to include apartments, row townhouses, semi-detached property, and detached property. Now, if you break that out, which I'd encourage you to do, I'm going to provide some contact information if you're interested in doing that. The months of supply for detached homes in Calgary is actually closer to 1.3. So there's very little supply of detached homes currently on the market. That number for apartments is about 4.4 or 4.5. So that's a lot better than it has been in the past, but the apartment segment is not performing as well as detached homes. And I think that, a large part of that is just people are rethinking the homes that they live in, especially with everything that's going on, and it doesn't matter what city. I often think about, the reason that people sacrifice their home. They might live in a 500 square foot apartment in a tower downtown Calgary or Vancouver or New York for that matter. And the reason they make that trade-off is because of the lifestyle that provides, right? They can go to boutique fitness classes and restaurants and cafes. And, when all of those things are closed during a pandemic, it's not quite as desirable to be living in such a small space. So, we're seeing detached homes in the bedroom communities like Okotoks, High River, Airdrie perform really, really well because people look at, this $400,000 apartment versus what I can get if I just move outside of the core. $400,000 might get you a 2-story house close to brand new with a double attached garage. So, I was listening to AM radio this morning and there was an interview with an agent and it was a pretty one-sided and biased interview. as they so often are, it's very sensationalized to the point where, the message that we all hear time and time again is it's a great time to buy. And, sure, interest rates are low, but I'd argue that, it's not always a great time to buy. Certainly, don't tell people who bought in 2007 or 2014 that they won't be happy about their purchase decision at that time, given our cyclical nature. So right now, if you are a buyer trying to buy a home, $400,000 to $600,000, it's going to be a struggle. Sellers are in the negotiating seat for that property. On the other side, if you're selling, and if you have an apartment to sell, the headwinds are against you on that. There's still a lot of supply, and the demand simply hasn't come back yet for that. So this is great data, but what you really need to do is look at, your specific community and your specific property type. So we're happy to provide, that data to you. Send us an email at any time. info@bodecanada.com is great. One other thing I want to touch on pricing, we're starting to see towards the right side of this chart here that prices are starting to trend upwards. Total Calgary residential market is up 7% year over year. And, we've got the data here going back all the way to 2005, and you can see these spikes. What's interesting is these spikes are very highly correlated to energy prices. So if you look at this, call it June, July 2014, there was a peak of oil. I think it was, $168 per barrel WTI at that point. And again, looking at kind of the spring, summer of 2014, our real estate, really saw a peak in valuation. And at that time too, oil was trading at somewhere between $110 and $115 a barrel. So, as I mentioned, send us an email. We're happy to send the data your way for your specific community, comparables for your specific property. But of course, you have access to this data at any time as well. So all you need to do is sign up for an account, and we give you access to 3 of our tools: market data, sold data, and comparables. So market data lets you see what's on the market and what has sold at a community level. And this really helps you understand supply and demand, and it helps you see trends in prices. Sold data, this is a tool that allows you to look up the sold price of any individual property just by searching by address. Of course, if you want a more high-level view, you can also search by community. So I'll show you an example of that momentarily. And finally, comparables. So this is a pretty cool tool. What it does is, if you give us 8 criteria about your home, simply as an example, if you owned a Evanston 2-story home that was built in 2014 with 1,800 square feet above grade and a double attached garage and a finished basement, you enter that information. We will then return results of comparable properties, and we'll say, based on what you've told us, this is a 97% match to your property, and you'll be able to see what it sold for. This is a 96% match to your property, and you can see what that sold for as well. So I'll just show you that really quickly. If we jump in here, you can see those 3 tools are right here: market data, sold data, and comparables. And we'll jump in the first one, market data. So again, you can search province. We'll search here for Calgary. And we'll look back, we'll just look back 2 years. You can apply filters, and you're given this chart. So if we look at a 1-year time horizon, average sold price, generate the graph. This will just take a moment to come up, and you can see the trends. The average sale price, what direction it's going, and then the sold price to list price ratio. By changing the chart type here, you can also look at things like days on market and number of sales. So if we wanted to look at days on market over the last 5 years, we can expect that days on market was quite low in 2017 when the market was hot, and it's declining again. So this is really an inverse relationship to number of sales. So if we flip this over to number of sales, we should see an inverse chart where number of sales was really high in 2017, really high in 2020, and lower in 18 and 19. This next tool is sold data. So simply pop in any address here. We'll choose an old address of mine. And you can see for the last 10 years, anytime that's transacted. Now, if you want to use this tool to look at information on a community basis, you can do that as well. So we'll look at Calgary. Using that same example, we'll look at Altadore over the last 3 months. If you hit apply, you'll now see all of the homes that have sold in Altadore over the last 3 months. So we can see here, beautiful home, sold for $2.33 million, 96% of the ask price. We can see that this home sold for well over this. They actually happen to know that this was a foreclosure, sold for 122% of the list price. But this information is all at your disposal. So feel free to have a look. And of course, the comparables tool, we won't do an example here, but enter this information. Actually, we'll do a quick one. So we'll go detached, bungalow, 1955, and we'll say 5 bedrooms, 2 baths. Just enter the address. Square footage and parking, hit apply. Now, this is where you can see all of the sold listings. So you can see, obviously, this is the best match, which is the actual address. And now you can see that 3907 15th Street is a 92% match based on that input. So these are the solds, and you can also see what's competing. So what is currently on the market. So 3714 15th Street is currently on the market at a price of $727, and it's an 87% match based on the criteria we've entered. Any questions, please don't hesitate. Reach out, info@bodecanada.com. Thanks.